Welcome back to the SaaS Playbook, the podcast where we unpack the real stories behind founders, operators, and leaders building in the tech space. Today's episode is brought to you by Hera Digital, helping founders build predictable sales engines and smarter revenue systems. If you'd like a free consult, comment engine and someone will reach out to you. Today, we're joined by Allen Nejah from Sunman Engineering. Sunman has been operating in the engineering space for decades, which means Allen brings something we don't often hear enough in the tech conversations: long-term perspective, industry cycles, and hard-earned experience. Allen, welcome to the SaaS Playbook.
Hi, Jenny. Thank you for having me. I appreciate that.
No worries. So going back a few steps, even before when you started Sunman and what it became today, what was the original gap that you saw in the engineering market that made you decide to build an entire business from?
Well, it's kind of sort of started this naturally. I'm an aerospace mechanical engineer by degree, and I always wanted to do technical stuff, of course. And also, I'm very entrepreneur type of person. All my family, my parents, basically, they're all pre-entrepreneur, and I always been grown up in that environment. So I always wanted to I always knew that I'm going to have my own company. So that's kind of how I started.
I mean, did you start in a background of engineering? So you obviously qualified in the engineering space and then sort of moved into using that as a service and then built from there? Or what was your background in engineering specifically?
So once I graduated from school, it was actually working technology company for like a couple of years before I started my own. So I did start in the technology right from the school, right? Right up. Of course, I have done a lot of other odd jobs, like probably everybody else. But.
Just like a typical entrepreneur. Allen, you got the symptoms for sure. So you've been in the industry for a very long time. What are some early lessons that still shape how you lead the business today?
So just, things are change, every 3, 4, 5 years, nothing has stayed the same. And like, I'm sure in your area, marketing, like I actually, we have a lot of experience in marketing, and, we see a lot of change, like going from phone calls to mails, post mails to telemarketing. At one point, we had more salespeople, telemarketing salespeople, sales engineers than actual engineers sitting in our office. That was like 35 some years ago. And then was like fax, was all, then email, then Google, then, so it keeps evolving, right? And so, basically we learn how to adapt to business and how to kind of sort of come up with the next thing, and it's kind of hard. It's not like, oh, we know exactly what the next thing is. Like we kind of gauge it and go for it and try to, rather than stay with what's going on, be ahead of what's going on. That's usually the case for us. So we always try to stay ahead of other people when it comes to business decisions, in terms of whatever we do. Yeah.
So it's safe to say that Sunman is innovative and you're not opposed to change, which is very rare in the engineering industry, if I can say. Change is often very hard, or at least in the Australian market. They have this saying, it says, if it's not broken, don't fix it, which is, in my opinion, bad, because if you're stuck in a situation where you don't see the growth or propose to put things in place for growth, you'll stay the same, right? And your business won't grow. But when you think about building a sustainable engineering firm versus chasing short-term wins, what mindset shifts was critical for you?
Okay, I'll give you an example that I bet everybody will relate to it. So let's take Space company from Elon Musk, and let's take government, Lockheed Martin and everybody else, space, they're in the space, right? And we've done a lot of work with government agencies, with military, we've done a lot of aerospace projects, within other industry that we have been working with, like robotics and, medical and IoT and stuff. But when it comes to like aerospace, answer your question by example, is that why Space so successful, so ahead of everybody else? It's not that the government companies or Lockheed Martin or everybody else around it don't know how to do it. The problem is that in government, in military, once that rule is exactly that. If it's working, you don't touch it. And for anybody who wants to touch it, it's going to take millions of dollars and 2 to 3 years for changing that specific, whatever they want to change in that engineering. If it's a shuttle and they have to update a part, really, really it's very expensive, takes a lot of money to do that and all that. So now my point is, Elon came in and says, you know what, I want to do a space program and help with everybody. I'm going to, it's my company. I do whatever I want. And he's right. And he brought in the latest, greatest technology into his, spaceships and to his shuttles and everything, right? So honest to God, you go to spaceships or shuttles that is been done, they're not even as powerful as your phone. Trust me on that. That's so scary. I'm always, how the hell they can go all the way, to moon and come back. And so that's an example. That's, you be able to update and, sort of get ahead of the game and think for today and tomorrow. Then definitely that's what we do. That's how we behave. That's how our gene is here. So we kind of have that Elon Musk gene in our blood. Yeah.
Yeah. I like that a lot. It sounds like Sunman is quite innovative and always constantly changing, or at least have the perspective of we're not really going to sit down like everybody else. So you're ahead of the curve, essentially. But from your perspective, what are the biggest shifts happening in engineering right now that business owners should be paying attention to?
So, I mean, there's so much happening, right? Obviously, the biggest thing is right now is AI, right? So we always have some, it's evolution. It's evolution, right? It's always, you have a new technology, new process, new ways of doing this. And actually, the way it works, it's as we have technology mature, when we have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different technology mature, they actually marry each other and they have a new, new type of baby technology. And I can give an example. So, let's say for, I don't know, for IoT, for you to check your home alarm system, you couldn't do that probably 20 years ago, 15 years ago, or maybe even 10 years ago, right? And the reason that you couldn't do it because the wireless capability was not, there, enough to be cheap, to be a small, to be practical. The components that we use today, they were not there, 10, 15 years ago. There are a number of different technologies have to be maturing for new technology to grow. So, we kind of understand that and we're looking for that marriage. We're looking for, okay, now what's next, right? So we kind of look into the next thing, and the nature of our business is that whatever we build, we design, it's really utilized average about 5 years from now. Sometimes could be 7 to 10 years, sometimes. But generally projects we work on usually come to market in 3 to 5 years, nothing less than 3 years. So from that point of view, naturally, not that we are smart people, just, because we are in it, we do this, we see all these different things and we get creative and we can see the future. Not that, we can go buy a second, but have a sense for what's going on for next thing, right? So we kind of aim our goals, objectives to those, that kind of directions. Yeah.
I mean, there's just what you touched on with AI being such a big conversation at the moment. With what you do is so specialized, Alan, how do you see AI fitting into the engineering space?
Well, AI is engineering made system. So, obviously one of the tasks is going to be solving, helping with engineering tasks, right? So honestly, even 25 years ago, as of 30 years ago, I could see AI happening today, not in this manner, but I always could see that machine can make machine. right? And it's happening now, right? It's actually robots making other robots, other machines, right? So like when I went to like different companies, assembly lines, I see all these different automatic, I could, it was very obvious to me that, and it's very obvious to me that next 5, 10 years, everything is going to be, not everything, but very much almost everything is going to be run by robots. And, like I tell this to people, and actually I know this. I heard Mr. Elon Musk also talk about that, and in in 10 years, for sure, in 10 years, we don't have to work. It doesn't mean, like when I tell this to my friends, to people around me, it's, "Oh, what happened to our job? Where do we get money? How do we get?" It's like 50 years ago when you were, riding a horse now versus riding a car and jets and train. Did anybody actually we have more jobs happening than less jobs, right? With every technology that comes out, like airplane, right? Airplane, people have to design them, make them, manufacture them, airports, everything that goes around, airplane facilities, airports and all that, right? Brings all these new jobs, right? So my prediction is that 5 to 10 years, we absolutely don't have to work. We just manage robots and machines. All of us owns machines, owns robots. Actually, just like a cleaner that everybody have one you go to any house, they have a vacuum cleaner. Robots, next 5 years, everybody's going to own a robot, in one way or other, for different capabilities, different. As a matter of fact, we are working on one, human robot that right now we work on the brain part of it. We're almost there. Probably another 6 months, 9 months, we can, the brain can talk to you, see you, recognize you. It's crazy, really, really crazy. Can help you with. Actually, we are gearing it. We are targeting elderly and infant. So it's going to be AI assistance for elderly and help. So yeah, in next 5, 10 years, that's where we are, that's what's happening. And that's where we're going to be basically managing machines and robots. And we don't have to work as hard, or if there is a bridge needs to be built, the robots will go and they do all the dangerous work. So yeah.
Yeah. So it's also from a perspective of risk reduction, right? Which is probably an area that not a lot of people really look into quite heavily outside of engineering. But I do agree. The way that businesses are building robots to manage robots is so vastly fast. Like if you are, I'm sure you've seen what China's building at the moment. They're building robotic dogs, they're building robotic humans, and I think I saw an example where they were boxing with the robots. It's still not quite there yet, but it's
I have a
scary.
video of it if you like to see it.
Maybe after the podcast, but it's almost getting to a point where it's actually getting a little bit scary, because we can't really control what they do ultimately, as much as we'd like to think we can. Once it gets to a point where it's constantly learning, it's going to outlearn us because we sleep, they don't. So it'll be interesting to see what that landscape looks like. As Sunman Engineering looks forward at 26 and beyond, what does progress really look like for you? Is that expanding more, scaling back maybe, or is it more, let's look at operational refinement?
So we are actually expanding at this time. We are working on two major technology. One is being what I just described. It's a AI device for healthcare for elderlies and infants that that provides many different assistance. It's very preventive versus reactive. So we actually even can tell if somebody's going to get sick, if somebody's going to feel if somebody's actually feel sad or emotionally down, or if they don't walk the way that every day, so we can see degradations. So there's a lot of preventive assistance and help. That's one technology we are working on. The other technology that we've been working on for past 7 years, and now we're ready to take it to the next step. It's a robotic transmission. I don't know if you know what transmission or gearbox for cars, any sort of vehicles or machinery, helicopter, boats, they all use gearbox transmission. So we designed a robotic gearbox transmission And just to give you some sense for it, we can actually increase EV range by 40%, which is huge, like, so that's another technology that we're working on now, and we're trying to take that to market within the next 2 years.
Yeah, wow. That's massive. I think especially when the healthcare space, it's a bit of a gray area, especially in Australia at least, where we're reluctant to look into robotic deployment, but we know we need it. So very interesting perspective. And we're in terms of where we are, it was very interesting to see what that looks like in the next 5 years, as you mentioned. If you were to tighten your focus even further, what does your ideal client profile really look like, and what makes that segment so attractive for Sunman Engineering?
Well, we always work on the new technologies, new innovations, and basically, the clients that we work with, they normally come, they work on something as an upgrade or next version or something totally. We do work with a lot of startups, and all the startups, they have some new great idea, 99% of time they have a great idea and all that. And obviously they're awesome with their ideas, maybe their knowledge base is in that industry that they came up the solution for. But most of the time they're looking for technical help, and so those are the type of companies, clients that I guess it's a good fit for us.
So just to relay, you're sort of mentioning startups with obviously a lot of knowledge with what they're trying to build and solve, right? So it's sort of within that sort of startup space. But I do know you do a fair amount of work with obviously big enterprises as well,
Yeah.
ranging from health tech all the way down to aerospace. So it really doesn't matter about what industry they're in. It's more about what they're trying to build from where I'm looking at least.
Well, we kind of focus on, like, 4 or 5 different industries, which is also they're related, like aerospace, medical, robotics, semiconductor, and IoT, wireless and stuff. And those are all really, in a way, they're also linked with each other. The applications are different, but, science behind them is very much the same.
Yeah. So underneath the hood, it's very similar. One last question for you, Alan. If you were speaking to a younger engineer or founder entering the industry today,
Yes.
what's one piece of advice you would tell them to hold on to if they want to build something that will last decades like you have built Sunman?
Well, it takes really a lot of commitment. It's very hard work. It's very lonely work. When you have your own company, you have to make all the decisions, unfortunately, and that's not fun. That's actually a lot of pressure. People say, "Oh, I want to make the decisions." But the decisions you make, it can cost you a lot of headache and money and time and pain. Yeah. So my biggest recommendations, what I would tell them is that to be strong, speak worse. It's a lot of hard work. It's always pays off. Hard work is always pays. Smart hard work is always pays off. Yeah, and communication, teamwork, and integrity. With customers, especially with your employees or with people you work with, it's everything. It's everything. Really, human, it's all about relationship. It's all about who likes who and what memory you leave behind or how you affect people. So honestly, the most important thing is to the integrity part of the business. You have the integrity, people see it, people feel it, people sense it, and everybody loves it, and they appreciate it. And so one of the things as a person, always straightforward with everyone, you know, if we can do it, we say we do it. If we cannot do it, we don't get, because then we get in trouble. Um, so yeah, integrity is very, very important. I would say, communication, integrity, people is the most important in any business. Especially people work for you. That's your family, right? You got to treat them, you know.
Well, you've had the business for such a long time, so you're obviously doing something correctly. But I like what you said around integrity, because I think with a lot of young founders around my age is they're just wanting to build fast and go fast, right? But what that means is you lose the integrity. And I think it's a nice reminder for anyone watching the podcast to remember why you're building what you're building and who you're building it for. I think is very valuable, but also look internally, because with technology and the way that I grew up with technology, people lose the human connection and the conversations. And that's why we developed this podcast, is to have those conversations and to have those connections where you wouldn't have had before, right? So it's a perfect tie down to what we're trying to achieve with the SaaS Playbook. But Alan, thank you so much for taking the time to share your perspective and your experiences, especially from the lens of someone who's been in the industry and evolved over the years, not just, a short term. If you're in the engineering space and you want to understand how seasoned firms navigate growth and market cycles, make sure to connect with Alan and learn more about Sunman Engineering. We'll include the details in the show notes. But Alan, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I really appreciate your time.